Hello, everybody. Welcome to Backlot 605. I am one of your hosts. I'm Casey Keldman. Join with me, as always, are my co-hosts, Brian Dracula Mensing. I don't know. That's the best I could come up with.
That's the best you got for me right now?
Yep.
I'm okay with that.
Sam, the Count
Light
Lens.
fry
I don't know.
lens.
I'm way off this week, guys. I'm sorry. This is horrible.
It's all good.
Guys, how we doing in our third week here of Dracula month? Our SEO on this episode is not going to be good because this movie is just simply titled Dracula.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's almost like we've been doing the same thing week after week those last few weeks.
Yeah. Hey, we're almost through Dracula month though, guys. We're
Yes.
over halfway.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, good.
We're there. We're mixing it up though here every week. We're talking about Dracula from 1979. This week we are joined by a previous guest. It's been a while since we've had our guest on the show. Ansel, if you can hear us, he is joining us again. You might recognize him from our episode we covered Loon Lake, which is a film he wrote and directed a few years ago, shot over just across the border from us in Minnesota. So welcome back to the show, man.
Thanks, man. Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. So first things first, before we even get into this movie, we've been trying to get you on for a while because you are a lifelong horror fan, a lifelong monster movie fan, and so finally, when Dracula month came up, I threw it out to you. Actually, is the first person I reached out to cover a Dracula movie. And at first, you said last week's episode, and then you changed your mind to this one. I want to know what was that change for you?
Well, I mean, much as I love Hammer, and I think Christopher Lee is the scariest Dracula. Dracula 1979 was the very first R-rated movie I ever saw as a kid, on videotape. So not in 1979. It was my mom had the old MCA VHS with the full color intact on that print, and she would tell me Interview with the Vampire as a bedtime story, and episodes of Dark Shadows and all these things that I really should not have been listening to when I was 4 years old, and hence
And
all
you
my
still turned out
problems
okay.
today, right? And she's like, well, we have the movie of Dracula, we could watch it. And I'm like, is it scary? And she's, no, it's not scary. And I remember looking at the videotape cover and it said rated R, and I'm like 4, and I knew what that meant of being like, oh, this is for adults. And we put it in, and it's not a scary film. Although Dead Mina with her red eyes was really kind of a moment for me as a kid then, but I was more like, oh man, I'm young, but Kate Nelligan is really nice to look at, and John Williams' score, and I kind of fell in love with the music then as a kid, and I was just way too young to see it, and I watched it anyway, and then we just watch it frequently afterward, and it's just a favorite of mine, and I think it's really unappreciated, I guess I'll conclude. I was really happy when Scream Factory put out the Blu-ray that had the original theatrical color version that I had grown up with as a kid on videotape. I think it's a really well-made, different take on the material. Before you come to Coppola's very romantic Dracula, which I also love that film too. This is just very fresh and different for that time. And it bombed too, and so therefore nobody really thinks about that one.
Up until we started doing this, I didn't even know it even existed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is I think this is the first time watch for all three of us actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it was kind of cool to fill in that blind spot. I knew that there was a Dracula from the 70s that wasn't Christopher Lee, but I'd never watched it, didn't know who it was. So this was actually kind of a brand new experience for me.
And this film also was a huge game changer, really, in the sense they cast Laurence Olivier as Van Helsing, and to have somebody of his caliber, especially at that time in 1979, 1978, really, when they shot it, horror movies were still frowned upon. I think only in the past 10 years we've started accepting horror as respectable art, if you want to call it that. But to get Laurence Olivier in a horror film at that time was unheard of, and to have a major caliber star, lend his talents to something like this, to a Dracula movie, which had already been run through by Hammer and not had become a joke, but like, oh, it's a Dracula thing. This was huge, and nobody had ever done that before, and it kind of started allowing other caliber actors to be like, okay, I'll join a couple horror movies. So yeah, that was a huge thing at that time. Just shut me up when you're done hearing film history trivia. That's all that rattles around in my head.
I was just gonna say the thing that stood out to me, because like Sam said, this is a first time watch for all three of us, so you're gonna have to be the expert on this episode. But like what stood out to me, and like obviously the first name that pops up for me is this is the Frank Langella version of Dracula, and that's the name that's always associated with this one. But
correct,
the name that stood out when looking through the credits and stuff, aside from John Williams doing a score for a Dracula movie, because that's just awesome, is director John Badham, who just right before this did Saturday Night Fever, and then apparently Universal is like, yep, that's our guy to remake Dracula.
Well,
are you serious? This is the guy that did Saturday Night Fever?
Yeah.
But you guys,
because the entire time this movie was playing, I'm like, this is Dracula through the lens of Saturday Night Fever.
But you guys, before Saturday Night Fever, John Badham started on directing Night Gallery episodes, and there's some fantastic, really spooky Night Gallery episodes that he directed. So he had the chops to come at it before. It's speaking as a director myself. Like, I did a love story, Will and Liz, before I went off and did Loon Lake. It's the genre is irrelevant to the material. He's still he's coming at it from the love story angle. I mean, that's obviously, that's what you're watching when you see the film. This is a love story version of Dracula. So, I don't think that there's a stigma of, oh, you only work in one genre as a filmmaker, you're not allowed to try your hand at something else. But he had the experience and the training basically from Night Gallery and a couple other episodic television series to do horror, and to do the gothic. There's an episode of Night Gallery that's my favorite, actually, called Camera Obscura, which is this period Victorian gothic episode, and you see all of the same setups and Hallmark atmosphere that he then brings over and expands upon in Dracula. So John Travolta dancing is I think that's the random interval in John Badham's career. And also, you guys got me going. I'm sorry. Mary Badham from To Kill a Mockingbird is his sister, Scout from To Kill a Mockingbird, which I always thought was cool.
Really?
Yeah.
That is cool.
Well, and I kind of play it on the same idea of like what you're saying there is that, you want a director, you want somebody not to necessarily stick to that one lane, because then, you look at like somebody like Jordan Peele. If he would have just stuck to his lane, we wouldn't have movies like Get Out and Us. If James Wan would have just stuck to horror, then we wouldn't get, $1 billion Aquaman, that sort of thing. Let these guys be like, all right, I know my lane, I know what I'm good at, but give me an opportunity to be able to try something different, because who knows, I might be good at that too.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, I mean, we were just talking earlier this week about David Gordon Green's career, all the weird turns that has taken, where he started as an indie darling, moved on to like stoner comedies. Now he's, directing massive Halloween movies,
Yeah.
Produced by, and you figure like Danny McBride producing.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was going to say with this week's director, I mean, unlike Sam, like I couldn't see a whole lot of the Saturday Night Feverness besides kind of the romanticism of I mean,
nothing when he was like low cut shirt coming in.
Oh,
through the
I mean,
window. I was half expecting him to like bust a John Travolta.
I was going to say Frank Langella is pretty sexy in this movie. I'm not going to lie. He's like that classic 70s sexy in this movie.
Yeah.
And it totally, and I think it just totally works in this movie. That you have this kind of suave, sexy, kind of mysterious man, whereas you compare it to, like, I don't know, if I was a Bela Lugosi, I don't know, he's not my type. If I was swinging that way for a Dracula. Frank Langella, though, I don't know. I think I get why the ladies fall for him, especially in this one.
I don't know. I mean,
I don't think there's a single Dracula actor that couldn't get it for me.
I just look at in the respect of the other Draculas that we have done this month here. You say that, and I get it to a certain extent, but in terms of Christopher Lee and Bela Lugosi that we've done so far, this is the one that felt to me the most flat. Like I just was not getting that same vibe out of him as we did out of the other ones. And maybe that's just because I have a preconceived notion of what I expect to get out of a Dracula, out of the character themselves, not necessarily the movie. And that's where, like, I think he did a phenomenal job in what he was doing and whatnot. But I just think in comparison to other people who play Dracula, that's where it's like I
Well,
think he needed a little bit more.
I think in that, and speaking to that, you already have Lugosi who sets this mold. He sets the standard. We know any 10-year-old kid, if you ask them to talk like Dracula, they're going to speak like Bela Lugosi, even if they've never seen it.
Yeah.
Lugosi sets the standard. Christopher Lee is the ferocious animal, the monster version. You know, those blood red eyes and the snarling and he plays him like a beast. He is no longer human, and I think that's what makes him really scary. So when you finally come to, and then in between, I'm gonna geek. I'm sorry. You got Lon Chaney Jr. as the son of Dracula, who's just as vicious and animalistic, and then you have Jack Palance in 1974 for Dan Curtis on television, who is sort of the fallen nobleman, but still like ferocious in his own way. And now you have Langella, who is just this Byronic hero. He's playing it more like Heathcliff from Wuthering Heights than a monster. And it's again going on the love story angle. He's the tragic, doomed romantic hero. He's in love with the girl that he cannot have, and is going to go at great lengths to win her, and then loses her. Like he is the hero of the story. He's not the scary bad guy, the monster that we should all be afraid of. We want to be seduced and fall under Dracula's spell and fly off with him, or fly off with his floating cape at the end. I'm sorry, I just spoiled a 40-year-old movie, but like it's just a whole other approach. He's not wearing fangs. He doesn't want to be evil. He's very classy. That scene when he comes in and for dinner and then he's dancing with her, he's just like I'm like, damn, that's the kind of guy I need to be to try to get some girls, And so it's a totally different aesthetic. So yeah, I think if you're coming at it thinking, oh, this is a horror movie, 1979, no, you're gonna fail at that approach.
I was just gonna say that's why I threw these four Draculas together, because I think they are so different, going from Lugosi to Lee to Langella to next week Gary Oldman. Those are four very different interpretations, where this is the least horror out of all of them, because
Correct.
It is so romantic. It is this love story drama with supernatural elements, and Dracula being the main character. Right. Whereas next week has some of those, all of them have those type of elements, especially next week. But I think next week is like this epic, grand adventure of Dracula. This one, and that's why I think this one stands out amongst the Dracula lore of all the film adaptations. It is so wrapped up in the love story angle. The whole time sitting through this, I'm like, again, this is just tied to the mythos of Dracula. I'm like, man, Jonathan Harker, he can never catch a break. Oh, everybody's always trying to steal his girl. Every time he shows up in these movies, Dracula's just trying to steal his girl. I feel bad for him every time.
It's that multiverse thing where Dracula always has to go after Harker.
He wants his girl. That's what he wants, I guess.
Except this is the only version where they reversed the roles. Lucy is now Mina, and Mina is now Lucy.
I was just going to ask, do you know why that is?
They thought that Lucy was a better name than Mina. I'm not even kidding. I looked this up because I wondered the same thing. They literally liked the sound of the name Lucy more than Mina, so they wanted Lucy to be the name that they used more in the movie.
And I think also, but also coming again at the sexual romantic side, Lucy in the novel is more bold and willing to take risks, and that whole aspect of the character is still in the film. Mina is frail and fragile and virginal and that is still in the film, and it's just the plot points is reversed. She succumbs to Dracula first because she's weaker, and Lucy is stronger and a more interesting dynamic woman, especially for the era that they're setting the film in. So that's why Dracula is drawn to her. And but it's still the same characters from the novel, really, in spirit. So that's why I would say Lucy is the heroine of this film, rather than doing the reverse with Mina. It's all the sexual boldness.
I was going to say that's one of the biggest things that that stood out to me, is in terms of like what's really different between the stories. Again, swapping two of the main characters, and even kind of looking at, let's jump into the movie a little bit more. If you jump into like Van Helsing again, last week we just ranted and raved over Peter Cushing's Van Helsing. I want to get everybody's thoughts on Van Helsing in this movie, because again, as we get different Draculas in each of these movies, you get very different Van Helsings each go around throughout this entire month of movies that we're covering.
I'll say this. I'm kind of with Brian. This movie fell a little flat for me, but Laurence Olivier's Van Helsing was a high point for me. Particularly, I mean, he doesn't show up until his daughter is turned, right? Like, and I think that's what the first part of this movie was lacking for me. Like, I don't know. They started off really strong with the boat scene, and then I just kind of felt like there was not a lot of propulsive action moving forward. And I think that Van Helsing gives it that propulsive
push
thing that it needed in the second half of this movie. I definitely think the movie picks up for me as it goes. It took a while to get there for me. I think the scene in the mines below, where he has to, like, essentially ward off his daughter, is one of the more heartbreaking scenes I've seen in a Dracula movie. He plays that so well. So I'd say that he was definitely, in this instance, the high point for me. And also Donald Pleasance's terrible doctor, who is trying to get someone to breathe by slapping them in the face.
Isn't that how you're supposed to do that?
He's a terrible doctor. He's a terrible psychiatrist in Halloween movies. Like, I never went to medical school, but I know you're not supposed to handle things the way he does in these.
He should have just come out blasting like he does in Halloween. Just start shooting up Dracula. Just come out blasting like Danny DeVito and It's Always Sunny.
I staked him 6 times.
Donald Pleasance is too busy eating in Dracula to stake anybody.
Yeah,
that's what he does in the
The
film.
only
And he
steak
does that
he's
purposely.
eating is steak.
He's
like, I'm here to get paid and to eat.
He's totally just walking away with every scene as he's just shoving something in his mouth and stealing frames at the end of the shots, and that was what Donald Pleasance would do. If you really watch Donald Pleasance movies, he is doing every trick in the book to get extra frame time and screen time. I gotta say, I don't really like Laurence Olivier as Van Helsing. I think,
really.
and I'll tell you, like, there's a scene at the very end when they're gonna get on the ship, when they're chasing the coffins and all that. And he just turns to Donald Pleasance and goes, "Okay, I'm getting on the ship. Bye." And then he just turns and jumps on the boat. And it's like, shit, dude. Like, that's what is that? Now, on the other hand, when you said when he stakes Mina down in the mines, that is the scene that got Laurence Olivier to do the film. Like, he was like, "I want to play a scene where I kill my daughter. That's fascinating to me. That's why I'll do this movie." And yeah, he does play that scene really well. I mean, I think Laurence Olivier is fantastic in Rebecca. Some of his Shakespeare movies, I don't really like his Richard III, but there's a couple, like Hamlet, he's obviously great in. But I just think he's Edward Van Sloan in 1931's Dracula. I mean, I don't know when you guys saw all these films. I saw them all as a kid, so I'm seeing a bunch of old men fighting Dracula. But Edward Van Sloan looks just as old as Laurence Olivier. He probably wasn't, though. He looks just as ancient and wizened. And yet I think that he is far more effective and a threat and like a worthy opponent for Lugosi. Peter Cushing is fucking Van Helsing, man. I mean, he is the most
Oh yeah.
athletic, and I mean, he is Van Helsing.
Mhm.
Peter Cushing can take down anybody. And now we have Laurence Olivier, who in reality was barely like able to move, and if you touched him the wrong way, he would bleed, and half of the scenes in the film are not him, it's a stunt double. And he's mustering up all of his strength and everything to give what he can to this performance. But I just think it's like if Frank Langella was to slap him the way that Donald Pleasance slaps Mina around, Olivier would be done for as soon as he showed up on the train. And not just Olivier, but Van Helsing himself. Like he's just so. And there's the scene between him and Dracula in the study where they smash the mirror and they do all the lines from the Hamilton Dean play that they do in the 31 film, and it's fine. I think Olivier is still giving it his all, but I'm still like, dude, Frank, knock him over. You can take him down. Anthony Hopkins as Van Helsing. That's a Van Helsing that he's gonna take care of shit. So that is where I think the movie kind of falters, but I am more forgiving because I'm like, well, for the time and the magnitude of getting Olivier and all these other factors that go into the act of making a film, I can overlook. But when you really like catch me off guard and I'm just sitting there watching this movie, I'm like, yeah, no, you're not you're not effective. I'm not threatened by you if I was Dracula.
Yeah, that's kind of how I lean on this Van Helsing, where I think that scene with him and his daughter is incredible. I think he at least has more emotional stakes this time around with that type of scene, more so than just I'm a badass and I'm going to hunt Dracula. It's just I think there's a combination that needs to be had in this movie, and yeah, I don't buy this Van Helsing.
He's lacking power,
and
yeah,
you guys aren't wrong. And maybe what I need to say is that I like what they did with the character of Van Helsing in this. Mm-hmm. I love the scene down in the mines, but outside of that, I can't really bring to mind anything he does that's really stand out, except for that line reading that you said. I remember watching that and being like, oh, that was weird. Yeah. It was like he was just reading it right off of a teleprompter.
Yeah. I go now, bye. Like, shit.
Yeah.
Some guys
I forgot about that. I'm so glad you brought that up because I remember watching that and being like, well, wait, what?
I don't know. I always laugh at that line. I can't help it. I'm like, I shouldn't laugh, but it's funny.
Yeah. Like that's the take they put in the movie.
But also, just speaking, they were planning on having Donald Pleasance play Van Helsing. And then Olivier became available. So that would have been interesting to see. Mm-hmm. I think Donald Pleasance would have been a fine Van Helsing. I think he would have been more powerful in a way because obviously he's younger. Donald Pleasance is awesome. I mean, Olivier is awesome too, but like Donald Pleasance is like he's fun to watch always, no matter what movie it is. If it's a Polanski thing or if it's an Amicus thing or if it's a piece of shit, like it's gonna be fun because Donald Pleasance is gonna bring it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was gonna say he would feel like a wild card Van Helsing. Like he's super unpredictable. Like you don't know what Van Helsing's gonna do by the end of this. It's like, is he gonna stab him? Is he gonna stab someone else? I don't know.
They could literally use the "I staked him 6 times" line.
I think if Pleasance had played Van Helsing, he'd been more like Anthony Hopkins. Van Helsing.
Olivier should have been Seward. Why wouldn't they have just switched them? That's what I would have done.
Well, you got Laurence
Olivier. Seward and
Van Helsing. He's the huge star. We're gonna put him in the more recognizable name.
That's fair. That's fair.
But, okay, but
yeah, we can't be putting famous names into throwaway characters just to grab people to put them in the seats,
like they do now.
Right. Yeah, but now it's a trope. Now you just want to see. Now you want to be like, all right, who's the fancy person they're gonna put in there just so we can watch them get killed off.
We're gonna market Zendaya all throughout Dune, and she's gonna be in it for like a minute and a half. But that's all the poster art, man.
I was going to say one thing we you guys just touched on was the exchanging of certain line scenes from the play from the 1931 Dracula. I think one that really works really well in this movie is the line of the with the wolves, the sound of the wolves,
Oh yeah.
what music they make.
What sad
And this
music
time,
they
what
make.
sad music they
Yes.
make. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think that
Yep.
adding that one line in there and in the context of where it's at in this movie is so, for me, is much more powerful in a different way than the
Yeah.
Lugosi one. The Lugosi one is terrifying when he
Yeah.
says it. This is like this is romantic. Just
Yeah.
adding that one line in there.
Yeah, doomed romance.
Mhm.
That's what this movie is. And then you got John Williams' score going in the background.
Yeah.
Like,
That was
That-
one of those things. Watching the credits and his name pops up, I'm like, you have my attention.
Yep.
Because
Yeah.
I mean, he's just coming off of Star Wars. He's already has a good name for himself to begin with and whatnot. You're like, all right, well, at least that for the sake of the atmosphere, the music that is going to be behind this entire movie, you at least know that you have a top-notch composer that is not going to be dismissive of the material that he's producing for.
I have
Yeah.
a funny story about John Williams' score. So, this past summer, I walked into the Hollywood Book and Poster Company in Burbank. There's a plug for them. I used to go to their store all the time as a kid on Hollywood Boulevard. Now they're in the Valley. They had the original 1979 press book for this film, and that Universal put out. And it's got little bios of the cast and crew and photos and all this shit. And there's a blurb, obviously, about John Williams and his headshot, conducting and whatnot. And I think it's brilliant. There's no mention of Star Wars at all in his bio. Instead, it says the Academy Award-winning composer of Valley of the Dolls, which I think is the most left field. I fucking love Valley of the Dolls, by the way. That's the most left field choice to name John Williams. Oh, that's what you're going to recognize him from, the score for Valley of the Dolls, instead of
not from Star Wars,
Star
or
Wars, which just came out
Jaws,
2 years earlier, or Jaws.
Yeah.
or even early Altman films, or Brian De Palma's The Fury. Valley of the
Right.
Dolls is the movie we're gonna go with. Barbara
Well, I mean-
Parkin's Power, man.
I mean, I suppose for the context of the book, they're looking to be like, all right, what horror / type of film can we throw in it? Granted, Jaws would be a good probably
Yeah.
one to put in there, but like the guy that's gonna go pick up the horror book may or may not necessarily be a sci-fi fan and be like, screw Star Wars, I'm not gonna watch that garbage.
No, I'm gonna watch 3 women doing dope and pills and booze and having sex and campy musical numbers, and that's the movie that I'm gonna know him from.
Man, I need to watch this movie.
Valley of the Dolls. You'll never forget it.
I was going to say, as soon as Williams' score kicks in this movie, right away in the opening, I'm like, "Yep, I'm on board 100% for this."
Yep.
Because when you think of, again, Williams scores, you don't think of Dracula. Like, that isn't
No.
a combination you would ever think of. You think of the sweeping epic scores. But again, once you kind of put Dracula into context, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. And especially with the opening on this boat, kind of sets the mood, the tone for what this movie's going for. I think that's such a effective opening for this movie, and I love that we don't jump into the just traditional opening of Jonathan Harker or Renfield in the 31 version going to Dracula's castle, and that's the opening of the movie. I like how we get that like 30 minutes later, is we get a version of that scene. Then that at least keeps it fresh, mixes it up, tells the same story but in a different way. And I think that's what really stands out about this movie is like, yeah, 1979, you could have done a straight remake of Dracula, the Lugosi one. Everybody knows, you could have done that, but instead this takes a different route. You go with what's in a way trending at the time. You kind of have the dark romanticism, the darker tone, the tragic endings that the 70s movies really have of the time. Meanwhile, you're throwing in a little horror in this movie, because I think that's one thing I want to touch on a little, because I think there are some great horror moments in this movie. We talked about earlier, the red eye effects are really great. Dracula crawling across the wall in this movie, though, like, some reason sent just chills down my spine, whether it's like scary or sexy. I couldn't tell. Maybe that's why it sent shivers down.
You're over here going, it's sending shivers down your spine. And, clearly I know it's 1979. They got to use a way to be able to make this look like it is. And I think it looks great. However, as soon as I see it, the first thing I immediately think of is like 66 Batman.
Yeah.
Because it's all about perspective, because you clearly know he's only just crawling across the floor. He's making it look good, but I'm just waiting for like somebody to pop out one of those windows like 66 Batman.
Have you guys seen Scars of Dracula with Christopher Lee? It's like I think the third before the last Dracula Hammer film, because it's the first one where they do Dracula crawling down a wall. And Scars of Dracula is admittedly not a good Hammer Dracula at all, but they try in that moment. This version is the first time they do that scene on a proper budget, and I think it actually works really well. But if you really want to make fun of Dracula climbing down a wall and a Batman villain, pull up Scars of Dracula and then talk to me.
I'll come back to you and be like, I rescind my previous comment.
Yes. Because I thought those scenes looked great, but I don't know, like Langella just never was creepy or scary to me, I guess. And he was obviously coming at it from a different angle. You look into it and he was very clearly trying to find the humanity in the monster, and I appreciate that. It just, I don't know, it never clicked for me in this movie. It just never, I don't think the script gave him enough depth to do what he was trying to pull off. I mean?
Clearly we know that he can do evil. He was Skeletor after all.
Yeah, he's a great actor. I think the thing is what he was trying to do, for me at least, didn't match up with what was in the script.
Which is why the film made no money when it came out, because everybody was expecting, Dracula, horror. And they got this love story. And at the same time, in 1979, we also had Salem's Lot on television. We had Nosferatu being remade by Herzog and Kinski, using the names Dracula in that one. And you had Love at First Bite with George Hamilton, which is pretty much murdered this film's box office, because that came out in June and this came out in August. So everybody saw this and they just laughed through it, because all they could think of was Love at First Bite 2 months prior. Something else I was going to say when you guys were talking about, the lines from the Lugosi original and whatnot, the whole movie started because they were doing a revival of Dracula on Broadway. And that's why Frank Langella is playing Dracula, because he played him on Broadway. And
which I guess I could see that. I mean, this definitely has like a Broadway-esque type of performance to it.
Yeah, and Edward Gorey did all the design, like the whole thing for this, and it was done more tongue-in-cheek, but he played it straight, Langella. And then it became a huge runaway success, and they're like, well, let's bring it to film. So they didn't adapt the show so much as they went and saw the show and saw his performance and saw what he was doing as the hero, as the lovesick, doomed, romantic, Byronic character, and built the film around that interpretation. So the whole movie's feeling and stuff just stems out of his performance, actually, of not playing the horror, not playing the monster, not playing the vampire, and instead just this very distinguished nobleman with a problem. And the film is a reflection of that.
Yeah,
and again, that's why nobody was expecting. Yeah, nobody was expecting that, and they were all expecting horror, and they didn't get that. And I think that's also why it's taken like 30 some years for everybody to catch up with what they were trying to achieve with this film. And anyway,
I was going to say my to compare it to next week's movie, not to jump to that one already, with Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Coppola version. I don't buy him as a tragic hero in that, or a tragic villain. Right? This one I do, because in that one I'm like, no, you're kind of just a bad guy. You killed a lot of people. Yeah, you're not a good dude, Gary Oldman. Here I'm like, yeah, just let him end up with a girl. Why not? Yeah. Like he's in love with her. Like let him have it. Jonathan Harker can have his shot next time. Like he can find another woman. That's that. And I think
are you
that's
condoning adultery?
I'm No. But next movie, and let Keanu get the girl. But here
With
I'm
his
like,
questionable accent.
You're not wrong.
he's trying, and I appreciate that he's trying. Uh,
Yes, that's true. That's true. That's true.
that's all I can say about Keanu's performance in that movie. He's trying. But
He's
like
trying
for this one,
hard.
he's he's trying hard.
Just imagine Johnny Depp in that role, which was the plan. That was the plan, and then Columbia said, "No, we don't want him. We want the other guy. He makes more money with Bill and Ted." So they had to fire Johnny Depp from Jonathan Harker, and Johnny
Because
Depp went
Bill
off
and
and did
Ted.
Edward Scissorhands instead. So
Look
Yeah.
what Bill and Ted did to us.
yeah.
Oh my God!
We
Can
got
you
John
imagine
Wick.
a Keanu starring Edward Scissorhands?
Or Tom Cruise as Edward Scissorhands, but that's a whole other podcast. So maybe we should stick to Dracula
We,
79.
we need to have an episode with him of just who could have been.
Could have been.
Yeah.
I want to see a Tom Cruise Edward Scissorhands now.
Do we though? Do we want that?
Yeah, we
Kinda
got
do.
the Mummy. That was bad enough.
That is such a guilty pleasure movie for me. It's so god awful, and I have so much fun watching it.
Well, it's a whole other. I mean, no, there's just so much wrong with that film. So much wrong with that film, and I'm speaking as a diehard Universal monster fan. Like
Yeah.
Universal, they need me. I
same.
could be the Kevin Feige of Universal monsters. That movie was a fucking piece of shit.
Mhm.
I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
don't know if I'm supposed to be cussing. It's too late now, I guess. But.
You can at the Tom
Okay.
Cruise the Mummy.
Yeah,
That's fine.
that was a piece of shit. That was awful. God awful.
No,
I don't disagree with you.
It was,
No,
I mean, there's
but-
parts where they're trying to do American Werewolf in London and they're failing. There's parts where it's Mission Impossible. There's part they forgot the Mummy was in the movie at one point. Like,
They have
What am I
Tom
looking
Cruise
at
playing
here?
someone who's literally half his age.
yeah,
Like
That's
he's running around playing a 26-year-old for some reason.
and then Russell Crowe was Jekyll and Hyde, which was cool. But then all of a sudden he turned into Hyde and fought Tom Cruise. And then we're not fighting, and now we're gonna. Like, what is going on here, man?
What is
Yeah.
Tom Cruise by the end of this movie? What is he
the
supposed to
Mummy.
be?
He's like possessed by her or something, and they lock him up. And then there's like the creature from the Black Lagoon's arm in a jar, and like all this. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, what part of that don't you enjoy watching?
The part where it's like, why can't you make a good Universal monster movie? Like,
This is-
you clearly can. I'm one of the.
Yeah, like the
Again,
Invisible
we're going
Man.
off topic, but I think the Benicio del Toro Wolfman movie is pretty good. It's an unnecessary remake that nobody asked for. But if you're going to do it, at least you handled that right. It was gothic.
Oh
It
god.
was still
yeah.
true to the material. It was R-rated. They did not shine away from the horror. I'm like, if you're going to do these things, go that route. Now, again, that made no money too, just like this film, Dracula
I
79.
know.
But people are now appreciating it in the 10 15 years since it's come out. I see a lot more love for that movie on the internet than I did when it came out. I don't see
Mhm.
any love for the Mummy. I don't think I ever will. But
Probably
and that's
not.
not a problem. But you like it, well, that's fine, dude.
No, that's
I-
where
like-
no, I agree.
Yeah.
Universal needs their Feige. Universal just needs to hire like Lee Winnell and just be like, here, I want you to give me the Universal Monsters universe that we so desire.
Dude, I really also did not like the Invisible Man because it wasn't
Really?
the Invisible Man. It's not the
Yeah,
Invisible Man.
okay.
It's a dude in a suit. And
Okay.
he's
Yeah,
using, like,
I
it's-
understand it. I understand
You've
it.
got a great novel. You have a great source novel. H.G. Wells wrote you a great text. Do that. Do it today, but do that. Like, instead, I'm watching The Handmaid's Tale with a dude in a suit. Like, this is not a Universal monster movie. I'm sorry. You can put the label on it, but it's not. I'm sorry.
So
we-
can
we're
I ask
passionate
you
about these
another?
things.
Can I ask you another like slightly off-topic question, just because I'm very
Anytime. Go
curious
for
to hear this? How do you feel about Lee Winnell returning to do a Wolfman movie starring Ryan Gosling? Because I personally am stoked for that.
I think because when they said it's going to be like Nightcrawler, I went,
Mhm.
oh. Now, Lee Winnell, I thought Upgrade was fantastic.
Yeah.
If you guys saw that film,
It's
that was
yeah,
one of
it's
the best
incredible.
movies. That was fantastic. So when they
Yeah.
said, "Oh, he's going to do the Invisible Man," I'm like, "Oh, great! You know, he's a good filmmaker. I like the Insidious movie. I like his stuff. Upgrade was brilliant. I think what they announced, where it's going to be more in the vein of Nightcrawler, I'm like, that could be cool.
Yeah.
I'm not at all. one of those guys where it's like, you know, I will wait and see the film and then make up my opinion from there, because I make movies as well. So it's
Right.
not fair to, you know, totally shit upon a film before it's come out. Give it a chance.
Mhm.
The Invisible Man movie as a standalone, just regular thriller was fine, but it's not a
Mhm.
Universal monster movie. So I'm not. There's some plot holes and things that didn't make any sense in it, though. It's like, he's got the knife and the phone and stuff up in the attic. Just fucking show that to the cops already, instead of, you know, another 80 minutes of this movie. But that's neither here nor there. Doing the Wolfman, though, I think it could be interesting. Gosling seems to be like a monster kid, and we already have one Wolfman remake that is, you know, Larry Talbot, that we didn't need. So I guess
Why
we're
not
okay to
another
have
one?
another one. Yeah, another. All right, go for
Yeah.
it.
I'm gonna transition our way back to Dracula, but before
Yeah,
we get
sorry.
to back,
We're going-
before we
we're
get back to
on
this
monsters.
Universal Dracula, I'm just gonna throw out there, Dracula Untold is one of the better Universal monster movie remakes. If you want to throw it out there as a remake, it's not a remake. I
It's
don't know,
not.
reboots. I don't, whatever they were trying to do with it. I kind of like it. It's better than Tom Cruise's The Mummy.
Yeah,
I
I'll
still
give it
haven't
that.
seen it. I need to check it out though.
I'll give it that. I thought it was not a Dracula movie, and not a. I mean, it was like Lord of the Rings or any kind of war epic, medieval war epic. But I thought Luke Evans was great.
Mhm.
I would
Yeah.
see him again if they brought him back and did a. If they want to bring Benicio back as the Wolfman and get Luke Evans as a Dracula and get some dude that's a good, you know, if they want to get Javier Bardem like they had announced for the Bride of Frankenstein remake, and do a, you know, House of Frankenstein Monster Mash movie, I'd watch Luke Evans again as Dracula. He was good.
Mhm.
Yeah. I know that's
Anyway.
one of the things that I'm the most disappointed in, is we're never gonna get a Javier Bardem Frankenstein.
That's
now.
Frankenstein?
Like,
Frankenstein. Well, never say never. Money talks,
I
man.
guess not.
It's okay. We'll never get a Johnny Depp Invisible Man, so that's good.
That's okay too.
So, Dracula, 1979. That's what we're talking about. I
I'm
think
sorry. I was so glad when we got a Universal Monsters nerd on here, because like I love the Universal Monsters. So
Hey, they're why I make movies today. So I'm very passionate, and I care about the monsters, man. You know, I always see on the internet
sure.
people like, "Oh, what's a good movie? What's a good horror movie to show my 6-year-old?" And I'm like, the Universal Monster movies. That's the best.
Yeah.
That's the best gateway into this world of, you know, fantasy and gothic, and they
Mhm.
are our modern day Grimm's fairy tales.
Yeah.
You know, instead
For
of
sure.
Hansel and Gretel, or, you know, all those things, it's Dracula or Frankenstein or the Wolfman or the Phantom of the Opera. So
Yeah.
and Dracula 79 is good. I would consider that a Universal monster movie. It's Dracula as being remade by Universal, which did the 31 film. It's still gothic. It's still Victorian. It's still a adult
looks beautiful.
piece of it's an adult film. Like, it's not geared towards kids. Yeah, and there's money behind it. Like, they cared. They really pushed for this. They had
That's
the
one
whole
thing
Dracula's Castle show at Universal Studios afterwards as a result of this. So yeah.
You know, that's one thing at least I enjoyed about watching this here, is that, you know, this is the first time where we're clearly not just on a soundstage.
Yeah.
You know, there's actually exterior shots. There's the beach and all that stuff when the boat docks and all that stuff, where you actually, like you said, you know, this is the first time out of the ones we've watched so far where it's like, oh, they actually had somewhat of a decent budget that
Right.
was out them to be outside and give me more of that atmosphere that I've been desiring out of the last few films. I mean, again, 1931, you know, you're gonna expect that you know, they're still in the infancy of movie making and whatnot. Everything's gonna be on a soundstage.
They're still in the infancy of sound itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
where like at least this is the time where it's like, oh, I finally get to be able to feel like I'm actually immersed in a world. You know,
Right.
granted, that's where that little bit of that world, there's parts of it that didn't work for me here, but in terms of the design, the sets, the locations, the music, everything that is surrounding this film is phenomenal.
Yeah, no, it's a real big budget epic, and they cared. They really did care.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm gonna kind of transition into our final thoughts here of 79 Dracula, and yeah, I'm just gonna piggyback off that to start mine, because I think the set work and the set design of this movie is really incredible. You know, Castle Dracula is just gothic, eerie, filled with mood and tone. And that's really where like the gothic horror comes out in this movie, is whenever you're there. But like for this movie, to set it aside from the rest of the Draculas, I think this is one of the standouts because it is very, very different from what you get from Lugosi, Christopher Lee. This is like we said, it's a romantic drama gothic horror film with the emphasis on the romance and drama before the horror, and again, just having that intertwined with the Dracula story, and having, I think, some really great performances in here. I mean, we really touched on the scene in the underground mines as a standout dramatic performance, but even like just as a character study and a character moment, Dracula at dinner is like my favorite part of this movie,
Right, yeah.
because I think he's just so damn charming, and you're like, yep, I understand why everybody likes you and why it's going to be a surprise when they figure out you're a undead vampire. Like that's going to be a shocking moment for these people. Obviously, all of us as audience members, you know that going in, but it's always about the reveal to everybody else, and seeing his performance before the reveal is really what makes it stand out. And you're like, yeah, this is going to suck for these people. No pun intended on suck. For these people, because of how charming and how personable and how much of a good guy he really is at the beginning of this movie. So that's what stands out for this. I mean, Frank Langella is for me is far and away the standout to this movie and what he's delivering to this performance. But I think up and down this entire cast, everybody's really great. And if you have not seen the '79 Dracula, this is definitely worth a recommendation for me, at least.
I actually have a question for you guys, since this was all like a first time view for you. Did you see it in what version did you see? Did you see the full color, or did you see, like, what disc did you watch? That's my question.
So
HBO
I
Max.
streamed it on Peacock, actually.
Okay.
It's on HBO
Well, maybe
Max.
that's what
I should have streamed it there. Okay, yeah, I streamed it on Peacock, and it was very desaturated.
Oh man, you guys
I-
saw the wrong print then.
And
Like,
that's one of my
yeah.
biggest issues with it, is it looks very, like, the set design you can tell is gorgeous, but like
No, you
it
guys
took
gotta give
me
this a
out of the
rewatch.
movie.
You got to give this a rewatch. So John Badham,
Okay.
he always wanted to shoot it in black and white, and then for some reason, when home video came out, there's the one VHS that came out that was the original color print, and then like I think in 1990, someone at Universal let him go crazy and desaturate the hell out of the movie to where it's nearly black and white.
Okay.
And I think that's the version you guys saw. If you saw
That
Scream
has
Factory,
to be
that's why I
it.
started this thing. Scream Factory put out the 2-disc Blu-ray, and disc 1 has the original theatrical print, that's the full color, and then disc 2 has John Badham's desaturated version that he likes. And if you see the original full color thing, let's have this discussion again, because I think you guys will appreciate this movie so much more. It's
You
night
know
and
what?
day.
I genuinely think you might be onto that, because that is the thing that bothered me throughout this entire thing. Was I was like, if you're gonna desaturate it this much, just make it black and white. This is ridiculous.
Right.
You know,
there's
like,
a whole level that you've lost by that. I mean, talk about immersion, like the colors, the fall atmosphere. Oh my god, it's amazing. The original color print. So
I'm 100%
the Scream
going
Factory
to
Blu-ray.
rewatch this in color then. Yes.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, that's awesome. I mean, this movie, like, clearly I watched the wrong version, because it didn't work for me on a lot of levels. I think part of it is, it's the shock of like going into it expecting like what you expect from a Dracula movie and not getting that. And I think just part of it is I don't know, some of it just it fell flat for me. There were certain areas where I didn't feel as emotionally connected as I felt like I should be. I just, like I said, I think Frank Langella is trying to do more than what this script is really letting him, I guess. I don't know. But a big thing for me was the muted tone and colors. And so I think that with some color, it's gonna pop more, and I'm actually going to enjoy it.
There he is. That's the Scream Factory Blu-ray art. Yep.
And this is Scream Factory's website, Sam. It's still available. It's not out of print.
Okay, I might have to check it out.
And he's correct, because there we go. All of that
Yeah,
Oh,
there's
nice.
YouTube
Yeah.
YouTube links that show the original color
Yeah.
and comparison, and he sucked the life out of it by desaturating. I remember when I got the DVD when it came out, and I was so excited. I hadn't watched it in a while, and I popped in, I'm like, what the hell's going on? Like, where's all the color? And then I found out, oh, he got a hold of the color dials and had fun. And it's been
Oh, you went George
unavailable.
Lucas on it.
He did it. Yeah,
I mean,
and it's been
it
unavailable like
looks
that for 30
bad
years.
though. I don't understand how he thinks it looks better.
I know, right? I know.
Because it looks bad. Like, that's the one thing I'm like, the set design is incredible, but what is happening with like the color filter?
Yep,
Like, I just,
yep.
I was not
The-
having
the
that. So that's
interior
really
of-
good to hear.
The interior of Carfax Abbey, the way that the gel lighting and all the colors and the filters and the fog and stuff in the theatrical print, it's even more magical, especially when she comes to have dinner with him and you got all the candles. It's beautiful in color, and
Okay.
what he did to it, yeah, you really, it's lessened the impact of the film. I mean, when you're shooting a film and you're thinking of the color and the different textures that you're going to have on the camera and the set design and the lighting and stuff, and you carefully plan a film for that, and to then screw with it after the fact, like, you are taking out all of the hard work and dedication that all the other artisans put into to create an effect, to create a mood, to create a psychological impact upon the audience, whether it's conscious or subconsciously, and to just lessen all that by taking out all of the life and vitality of the color, really has a negative impact on the film. So yeah, totally check out the Scream Factory Blu-ray. And it's a totally different movie almost. You feel like you're watching a brand new movie for all the
Awesome
atmosphere that you get back.
Yeah, I'll definitely be checking that out because, I mean, like I said, that was honest to God my biggest issue was the look of this movie. Just like, it almost puts you to sleep. It's so dull and dreary, and I was just like, what were they trying to go for this? Like, if they were trying to make a black and white Universal monster movie, just make it black and white.
Right.
You know?
The red eyes of the vampires in color is even more of like, oh shit, you know. It's yeah. Definitely seek out the original version.
I was gonna say the next time I watch it, that's the version. If I liked it this much in the inferior version, I can only imagine how much I like it if it in the proper theatrical version of this movie.
You'll come back 5 stars.
Yeah,
good. Yeah, I dug the hell out of this already. So, guys, I'm gonna go into to our last question, and I have no idea what I'm gonna say for this answer.
I have no idea either.
Aren't you supposed to be prepared for this?
I don't know what to do with this one, but the last question, obviously, we always end on: if you're gonna pair Dracula 1979 with another movie for a dream double feature, what is the other movie you're going to pair it with? So you're going to Dracula 1979 and blank.
Okay, I've got an out there one.
Okay.
We're going to watch Dracula 1979. And then right afterwards, I'm going to play 1981's Halloween 2 so we can watch Donald Pleasance go after the monster in the sequel. That's my double feature.
Your double feature is Don Pleasance is the through line.
Yeah, Donald Pleasance is the through line. It's a Donald Pleasance double feature. And we're going to pretend like Halloween 2 is actually a sequel to Dracula 1979. So we're going to be like, wait, what happened? Why is his face like, like, what's he talking about? He shot him 6 times. It's going to be great.
I'm gonna throw out just for funs and giggles and something I mentioned earlier or whatnot, but I'll take the Frank Langella through line and double feature this with Masters of Universe, because I want to see him in full on makeup being all Skeletor and going up against Dolph Lundgren. Because as bad as that movie is, I love that movie. That was one of those movies where I realized that Meg Foster's eyes really are like that. It makes her even creepier, knowing that those are not contacts.
Oh man, I was so perplexed by her eyes when I first saw They Live. I'm like, what is going on? Is that real or?
Yeah.
Well, and I think what it was for her was I saw Masters of the Universe before I saw They Live, and so you think of Masters of the Universe, you're like, oh, it's all part of the makeup, everything like that, and then you watch They Live, you're like, wait a minute here, did you forget to take the context out? Are you still stumped, Casey?
I have no idea what I would pair this with. Like,
Usually I'm the one that is like at a loss.
I'm gonna take the easy answer. You pair this with 1931 Dracula, and you do just the two Universal Draculas back to back. Like, that's all I can throw out there. I don't know what else I would really pair this with. Like, you throw out 31
Ooh,
Dracula
you're
and
boring,
79.
Casey.
I'll take the boring answer this week. I'll come up with something better next week.
I would say,
Bram Stoker's Dracula Point Break double feature.
yeah, right.
Oh yeah.
With
Whoa.
Edward Scissorhands as a chaser at the very end, you know.
Yeah.
I would actually say I would pair this with Universal's 1974 Frankenstein: The True Story. No, I'm sorry, it's 1973, and it was a TV film, two-parter. Much like this film is, it's a shot entirely on location in England. Huge actors, big time act. James Mason is in it. Cast of British greats. Jane Seymour is the monster's mate. Like that right there tells you. Right after Live and Let Die, Jane Seymour at her prime. And it's a very different, also Byronic, also romantic, in a very different homoerotic way, I'm gonna say, version of Frankenstein, also produced by Universal, both from the 70s. Very forgotten and underrated and underappreciated. Scream Factory has put out a Blu-ray of that as well. I would say Frankenstein: The True Story and Dracula 1979 for my unique Universal monsters of the 70s double bill.
I've never heard of that movie. It's going on the watch list. That's incredible.
It's really good. It's really
I
good.
just looked it up on IMDb while you were there. Like that cast list is
It's
incredible.
really good, man.
Like, oh my god,
I
I'm
always
excited to
wanted
watch
see
that.
as a kid. I'd always read about that in books and magazines, and it was just not available. And then, like 2006, Universal put out a DVD, and I got it, and it was excellent. It's excellent for a
awesome.
TV film. So, totally check it out.
I'm a fan of 70s TV horror because I mean, like Salem's Lot is one of my favorites. I just
this isn't
yeah.
horror in the same sense that like Dracula 79 isn't quite horror. It's
right.
It's human drama and sexual drama and morality and it's not your normal. There's some gruesome shot. I mean, gruesome for 1973 TV, but like it's like a BBC thing. It's like, you know, hot upper brow.
Cool.
I have no idea if that made sense, but
yeah.
That's what I would to watch with this.
Just throwing out BBC makes it all make sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Since we're talking 31, Dracula throughout this, I just have to know then Ansel, like what's your favorite version of that? Do you do it with the score or without the score?
Oh, that's a good question, dude. I actually really like the Philip Glass score. I have listened to that isolated on itself when I've been writing some scripts and stuff in the past. Yeah, you know what? Sometimes I'll just like put on the movie and I'll have the Philip Glass score playing in the background. But I'm just gonna throw a wrench into your whole question.
Mm-hmm.
I'll usually put on the Spanish version of Dracula from 1930. Because I love the photography and I love the staging and the way that George Melford directs that. Not that I'm not, screwing on Todd Browning, but just it's a much more visually dynamic film for 1931.
Yeah, it's actual. It's an actually cinematic movie, not a stage adaptation.
Correct.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And Lupita Tovar is pretty sexy as was it Mina or Lucy? I can't remember what they changed the names on that, but the Lupita Tovar is the femme fatale. She's nice.
All right, I'm not going to get you off the hook just yet. I got just one more thing to throw out to you as we're wrapping the show up. We're going to head into our plugs, but before we get to our plugs, let's get to yours first. Like, where can people follow you online? Where can they find your movies? I mean, we of course we mentioned Loon Lake here at the top of the show, but then you also you threw out Will and Liz there. Where can everybody find everything that you've worked on?
I have quite a bit. Well, you can. The main hub is my website, Hollinsworth Productions, HOLLINSWORTH Productions. There's no G. Everybody always puts a G, and they're just wrong. You can find all my feature films. The films that are available on DVD and streaming are there. A couple shorts. I have 3 films streaming. Loon Lake, a folk horror tale inspired by the Witch of Loon Lake from Minnesota. Best time of my life making a movie, by the way. Is streaming on Amazon Prime, on Tubi TV, on a couple of the Roku channel, a couple other platforms that I can't remember. It's on Blu-ray and DVD. I have Will and Liz, which is a love story set in Venice Beach. That's streaming as well on Prime and Tubi TV. And just recently, my award-winning film from 2015, The Last Case of August T. Harrison, which is an H.P. Lovecraft film noir, is now streaming on Amazon Prime, and it should be on Tubi, hopefully before Halloween. And
Nice.
yeah, and then you can check out my my YouTube channel, Hollinsworth Productions. I have a film column in We Belong Dead magazine out of the UK called Ansel's Asylum for the Psychotronic, where I just, if you've listened to me the past hour, I'm full of just random movie knowledge that nobody ever needs to know or care about. And I write about it in that column. And lastly, I have an Instagram, AHF DVDs, where I show off my extensive movie collection and, again, talk about movies way too much. And yeah, that's where you can find me. So
Awesome.
don't be an internet creeper, though.
Everybody follow him everywhere. Be that
Everywhere.
internet creeper. Man, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm going to get into our plugs before we end it here. You can find our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Amazon Music, and on YouTube. So give us a good subscribe there. You can find every episode coming out each and every Wednesday of the Backlot 605 podcast there. And you can check out our archive of previous episodes. All on those streaming services as well if you want to catch up on some older episodes, including our interview with Ansel from Loon Lake in late 2019. I think we did that. Yeah. So that's back in the archives. Go ahead and find it there.
It's still there.
Brian, where can they find us on social media?
Sam,
you wait.
I was waiting for my cue. You were failing me there, Casey.
You can take the silence as the cue.
That's the cue. All right, you can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd HQ, all at Backlot 605. Join us, follow us on social media. Also on Facebook, we have the South Dakota Film Community Group. Film enthusiasts, filmmakers, film podcasters like us, just anybody and everybody that enjoys film, join the conversation. We'd like to just talk about movies and what's going on and join the conversation. Sam,
if you like this
transition
and you would like more, you can always subscribe to our Patreon as well, where we have 4 bonus episodes a month. We have just done episodes on Venom Let There Be Carnage, which I almost forgot we did. Go ahead and listen to us maybe slag on that.
I forgot that was a movie, Sam. So that's
yeah.
But then what did we do afterwards?
On No Time to Die, which that was a much more pleasant conversation. And now we're going to be doing 2 more this month. One on Halloween Kills that should be dropping this week. And then when Dune comes out, we will be doing one on Dune as well. So if you want to hear our thoughts on those movies, you can check out our Patreon. For $5 a month, you get 4 extra episodes, polls, all those sorts of fun stuff. We're always doing cool things over on Patreon. So
yeah.
All right, as we're going to wrap this thing up, once again, thank you to our guests this week. Ansel, thank you so much for joining us. This was awesome. We have to get you back to talk about monster movies again, because you are just a wealth of knowledge of everything horror. So we absolutely had to bring you back.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I hope I was coherent and didn't cuss too much. And You know, it was fun. It's fun. It's always fun.
I always tag him as explicit, so we're
Yeah, right.
completely cool.
And you
I was about to
swore
say,
at Tom
usually
Cruise is the
I'm the
mummy,
one.
so it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Usually I'm the
Oh.
one that gets us that little E for explicit, so it's good that you took some heat off me this week.
Right on.
The-
Well, I'm happy
The
to do it again.
the MPA and the and all those different regulators are like, oh, they're just cussing at the mummy. Just let that one go.
It's fine. Well, again, thank
It's
you
like
all
the
for
random
listening.
F-bomb in the PG movies in the 80s.
Yeah.
They still happen today.
Nice.
I always
fucking model.
I always look forward to
Yeah.
them in the PG-13s. Like I was waiting for it in Venom just because I knew that they were going to drop it. I'm like, when are they going to drop it?
Yeah, and then they wasted it.
And then they
And then they wasted it.
Yeah, we're not going to waste it here. We already dropped our F-bomb on the Tom Cruise the Mummy. So yeah, with that, let us know your thoughts on this movie, Dracula 1979, and let us know your F-bomb comments about Tom Cruise's The Mummy as well. So thank you all for listening. We'll check you out next time on the Backlot of South Dakota.
Bye-bye.